Hello and welcome to 4am Art. So in this video we're going to work on some exercises that I think will really help you with your ability to draw. And it goes back down to the basics of drawing, which is the ability to draw lines. Straight lines, curved lines, long and short lines. So the first exercise here can be an exercise in and of itself, in that we're drawing these squares where inside we'll be drawing our patterns later on. So the goal here is to draw these squares as even as possible, as square as possible, and keeping an eye, paying attention to the lines being parallel as much as possible, going from one square to the other, and keeping all the corners as 90-degree angles as possible. So we're not looking just at the shape, the size of the squares, but also the spaces in between. So practice this. Initially, it may not be as even as you'd like, which is normal, and it's certainly not going to be perfect unless you were to use a ruler. But this is a great exercise. So practice this, and maybe practice even drawing rectangles. So the first pattern we're going to draw is this basket weave pattern. We're basically drawing short lines as controlled as possible, as parallel as possible. And again, we're looking at these squares now. These are small squares wherein these parallel lines are sitting. So as you draw these, you'll have to pay attention to keeping these smaller squares as even as possible. And this will really help you as far as drawing these short lines, not just in a vertical direction, but also horizontal. Practice these a lot, and like I said, these are the basic foundational skills for drawing, just like you would need to learn the letters of the alphabet, say A, B, C, D, etc., before you can start forming words, and learn words before you can start to make sentences. So if you can't draw these simple short lines, it'll be much more difficult to start drawing bigger, more complicated things with good control. This will be important once you start shading as well, as we get into cross-hatching, hatching, things like this. But of course, also just simply drawing the details of whatever it is you're drawing. So we'll continue this pattern until we get to the end of our square, and we'll just fill up the whole large square. So the next pattern is simply a collection of all vertical lines. This is great because this is, to me, is the most important stroke, vertical lines, because to me, all of the movement will be in your fingers to do these short lines. And you want to be very comfortable with this. And as we'll see later, if you can do this directional line very easily and very controlled, what you could always do is turn the paper around if you need to draw a different direction and still get the same kind of result. As far as where I'm putting these lines, it's totally random here. I'm just trying to fill up the blank space, and it's not important whether they overlap or not. Alright, so for the next one, we're going to draw lines in different directions. We'll start with a circle in the middle, or you could just draw a dot. And all these short lines now are going to be radiating directly from that center outward. Now this is really a great exercise because now you got to draw these lines in all different directions. Whether you draw from the inside out or outside in, totally depends on you, but it's good to practice both ways. And these are going to be random short lines. We're going to basically fill up the space just like earlier. And you could go ahead and draw these guidelines for yourself. That way it's easier to see what directional change you have to adjust for as you go around this space. You can see here I'm drawing from outside in, and then inside out. It all depends, but you want to practice both directions. Again, I'm drawing from outside in, and this particular direction is not particularly comfortable. The opposite diagonal, meaning from upper left to lower right, tends to be a little bit more difficult. Now here, from left to right diagonal, to me is fairly easy. So we'll just continue all around. Notice I'm not moving the paper. The directional change is all in the hand, and this will really improve your motor skills. So another way of doing it, of course, as some people will advocate, is to move the paper. And again, you're using just the vertical line that you are very familiar with. And to change directions, you just change the orientation of the paper. Both ways are totally valid, whatever's comfortable for you. Alright, we're getting into some curved lines here. Very important to be able to draw these as fair, as smooth as possible in different directions, and the pen going in different directions. The control here is also important as far as the spacing in between the lines. Then notice here that the lines do vary as far as the spaces in between. And notice too that it starts to add some three-dimensional quality to it. Like the surface of the paper here is undulating simply because of the way the lines are positioned as far as the spaces in between the lines. And this is a great way of adding surface shape to your drawing. And this is a great technique to use for doodling. Alright, so next on our list, we are going to imagine a shape that's in the center of our square. In this case, I'm going to draw an oval, or basically draw it in a negative shape, basically drawing around our oval. So I'm just going to use straight lines initially, vertical lines, and we're going to stop it each time, or start at the bottom where I would imagine the oval to be. Now you can be a lot more accurate here, of course, if you first pencil in the oval and make your pen marks based on that line. But this really helps you with visualizing where you're going to be drawing to, in this case the oval, and stopping your line at that point. So the first set of vertical lines is called hatching, where it's just parallel lines and you get a value with it. And what I'm doing here is I added a second layer of diagonal lines, which makes that area slightly darker. You get a darker tone or value. And at the furthest corners, I then add a third layer. And you can see now that there's a gradient there, going from dark in the outside to lightest. So for our next one, I'm starting with an oval over the lower left. And as I draw these parallel lines going outward, I start to vary the shape. So I'm basically metamorphosing the shape of our initial line to what's kind of like a distorted heart shape. So this is also a good practice technique, just help you be able to draw these curves smoothly, as well as use these for doodling to fill in some empty spaces. So with this next one, we'll start drawing some diagonal lines first. Again, we're trying to draw these as parallel, as evenly as possible. So pay attention to where you start the line and where you end the line. Very important. And don't worry if it's not perfect. I'm drawing these kind of fast, so it's not going to be all that accurate. So then, just like the other square, we'll start adding lines going the opposite direction, almost 90 degrees from the first set of lines. And again, this is called cross-hatching. And we'll make a gradient going from dark to light from the lower left to the upper right. So now we can add vertical lines this time. And actually we have a diagonal line here that can serve as our reference as to where we start these lines. So obviously this will make it easier. and make it a little bit more even. So this is a simplistic way of showing how to do some hatched shading with especially with a pen, because you really can't shade the same way you could with a pencil. So finally, let's do some more curves, and this time we're going to do a scallop pattern, and the goal here is to make it as even as possible, and each succeeding column will be offset from the first column, so then we'll have a fish scale pattern. So try these different patterns and try to make up some new patterns for yourself. And remember, these are the basic foundations, simple little exercises that'll help you a lot once you're drawing more complex compositions. So I hope you found this useful. I'm going to do another video and explore some other patterns and go from there. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.